Hi, it's me, Kat, and I'm back. I'm going to do a different video today. I want to first off apologize because I started doing these Freaky Fridays and it started getting a little bit too overwhelming for me. As I work with spirit, it can be very draining sometimes. It can be very, very beautiful experiences, but at the same time, it can be extremely exhausting. So I needed to take a little bit of time for some self-care and some healing because I was tapping into some old hurts and I needed to kind of process them and deal with them. Which brings me to wanting to discuss today about subliminals. I have worked with some subliminals and I want to talk about them because there are some that work, some that don't. Generally about 45 to 50% of the time they're going to work, but everyone works on such a different pace and different level within themselves, and something that's important that I need people to know. If you are epileptic, if you have any kind of seizure disorder, please stay away from the videos that work with any kind of frequencies, even the theta ones or the beta ones, because it's important in someone that's epileptic, or even if you're like me and you have seizures that are brought on by a trigger from trauma, or even sometimes seizures can be caused because you have damaged nerves. I know I have some damaged nerves, and I know for myself in my 20s, part of the reason why I was having my seizures was not from epilepsy. It was also from Lyme disease, which is late stage. And thankfully, my doctors figured out what was actually going on, and I was put on the right kind of medications, and everything was dealt with properly. And I do want to apologize about my eyes. Something that a lot of people don't know about me is years ago I had it's sort of like a mini stroke. It's called Bell's palsy. So on my left side I tend to look a little bit droopier than my right side is a little more, I guess, my better side. Technically I really don't know. So what I do want to say first is there are some people do some beautiful work with subliminals, and the people that I like working with, I think the most that I've found the most healing for myself have been Leora Alexandra and the hypnosis that Jake Ducey does. I've had some beautiful experiences, and I do want to talk about that really quickly, just to kind of prove that these things can actually work for you. So I was listening to this free hypnosis that Jake Ducey made like years ago, and COVID hit. I didn't have a lot of work, and I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do because I needed money coming in. So I started pet sitting just here and there, and the next thing I knew, I had like 5 different people that I was pet sitting for. And I was working with all of these different animals, and then I ended up going in working somewhere while someone was on a maternity leave, and I was earning, I think, the most money that I've actually ever earned working in a rescue ever in my life. It was the most beautiful, most amazing experience that I will keep with me my whole life. It was just absolutely amazingly beautiful in some ways and so tragic in others, because when you're working with animals that have been abused, gosh, it hurts. It hurts the soul on so many different levels, but you access different parts in your own self that are so beautiful, because you find that you are you may be angry about what happened to that animal, but it hits you in a way where you're like, I feel, so much better about myself. I feel more fulfilled in my life. I feel like I'm able to help to heal these animals and help them, feel better and live better, have a better daily life. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience. So working with animals, oh my gosh, I can't even stress how beautiful it is. So if you are really hurting internally, go to your local ASPCA, go to your local pound, see if you can connect with whether it's a cat, a dog, a bearded dragon, or a goat. It doesn't matter. Working with animals is so amazing and so healing, because you learn within yourself all of that beautiful patience and understanding that you have given to that animal. You know, that love that you give to that animal is going to be given back to you like quadruples. It's such an amazing, beautiful connection that you can have with these animals. And it doesn't really matter what kind of animal it is, although, you know, I highly suggest for people, because there's so many cats that need homes. There are so many older dogs that actually need homes, because sometimes what happens is people don't want to deal with the older animals. You know, they trade them in for a puppy or something, and actually adopting an older animal, even if it's 9, 10, 11, 14, doesn't matter how old it is can be so healing for you, and so beautiful and so healing for that animal as well. But back to subliminals. And here's an interesting story about something that I worked with my cat when he was much older. I found something on YouTube, and it was different you know, sounds that were supposed to be healing for a cat. And here my cat had been diagnosed with a thyroid disorder, and then he was diagnosed with a diabetic condition. His kidneys were being affected. All of these different areas in his body were starting to kind of shut down. He was senile and a little bit older and not moving around so well. So I found these sounds on YouTube, and he was listening to that, and I think it was actually easing some of his issues. And it wasn't that I was just doing that. Of course, I was taking him into the vet. I had to give him shots. I had to give him medicines. And let me tell you, when I was trying to get the prednisone in his mouth, he howled like there was a bloody murder going on. It was so, wow. I still think about that. So, you know, here I was in this hallway in the house, and it was like an echo chamber, and so I'm sure all of the neighbors heard him going, "Wah!" It probably sounded scary to a lot of different people. And he just, you know, prednisone is so nasty. The taste of it is so bad. So I really don't blame him for making those noises. The medicines help to a certain degree, but, you know, as an aging cat, his body was starting to shut down, and finding those frequencies and those sounds for him, I think, helped him to a certain degree. As much as it broke my heart when he passed away, I know that, you know, he hung out for me for, you know, with me longer than I think he thought he would. My cat Mingus lost his best friend when Chloe died, and he just started declining after she died. And I, of course, you know, talking with the vets and trying to get him healthier and better. And I had another cat that kind of ended up showing up in the house, and I think maybe that hurt his feelings a little bit. But as far as subliminals go, I started actually working with them way back then, and I realized an interesting, fascinating thing was happening, because some of the subliminals that I was working with were not necessarily frequencies, but they were, you know, affirmations that were said just under the level of hearing classical music, and a lot of them were healing affirmations. So it's, I'm healthy, my body is physically getting stronger, I'm becoming more flexible, I'm becoming more agile, you know, beautiful, healthy affirmations to hear. And I realized that my cats that were hearing those affirmations were becoming more agile, they were becoming more flexible, they were moving around better. And here Mingus had a thyroid condition, an arthritic condition, and here he is like jumping all around and being like a ninja, and it's like, it, not only was it working for me, but it was also working for him. Absolutely amazing. So the way the subliminals actually work, they access those theta brainwaves within yourself. Some of them have frequencies that they create in order for you to be able to access that. And it's those brain waves are the theta and the beta right before you fall asleep and right when you wake up, or while you're meditating. Quite often when you're meditating, you're accessing those theta brain waves. And if you're actually meditating and you start working with either subliminals or affirmations, that can be life transforming as well. But I do want to talk a little bit. I'm just grabbing my notes really quickly. You will find such an amazing transformation in your life when you are working with some different subliminals, because they do kind of get down in there into your subconscious, and they're trying to kind of reprogram how you've been thinking. So if you're like me and you were bullied, or you dealt with any kind of trauma or emotional abuse, verbal abuse, or physical abuse in your life, be a little bit more careful and do your research before you actually listen to the subliminals, so you know what's being accessed. Because what can happen is you can maybe have a phrase, and that person won't intend for you to have that trigger, but you have a trigger, because what happens is your brain is like, freaking out, because maybe you heard something when you were 5 years old that kept saying that money is the root of all evil, or you're an evil person because you did this or that, and internally maybe you think you're an evil person, when technically you're a good person, you're a beautiful person, you've never hurt anyone, you have a hard time even swatting flies, right? So knowing internally and learning that you're a good person may be that trigger, and you're just like, what? I don't even know how to react to this. How do I process this? So the brain needs to be able to go through accepting and learning how to change those thought processes around. So it's important to really thoroughly vet and research the people that you are listening to the subliminals from. What I do want to talk about really, really quickly is just explain what I have studied within my life. I'm 51 years old. I'm about to turn 52 in a few months here. So I started studying theater and art when I was much younger. So yes, I have a theater and drama degree. Yes, I have a degree in photography. But I have also studied adolescent psychology. I have studied cognitive psychology. I have studied behavioral psychology. I have worked with the kids. I have taught music. I've taught acting. I've taught voice lessons. I have studied shamanic journeying. I've been studying shamanic practices for longer than I'd like to admit. So I'm also studied neuro-linguistic programming, so I'm actually certified in doing that as well. I'm in the process now of actually studying Reiki and getting all of my attunements. I'm technically a spiritual coach. On the side, of course, I have all my side jobs, whether it's pet sitting, working in a rescue, or volunteering somewhere, working with animals. That's what I love doing. That's what is fulfilling. And I think that is what is important for people to access, are those areas and those lives that make you feel fulfilled and as a spiritual being. And as a whole being, and remembering that when you're listening to a subliminal, and maybe it's written out in the subliminal saying, I am not broken, your brain is going to accept the word broken, but is not necessarily going to hear the word not. So that's something to bear in mind. So when you are working with, realizing I'm a whole person, that's what you're going to say to yourself before you fall asleep and when you wake up. I'm a whole person. I'm a whole person, right? You're accessing those theta brain waves before you fall asleep and when you wake up. Better yet, an exercise that I've done quite often is to write down all of my favorite affirmations. I fold them up and I put them under my pillow and I sleep with them under my pillow. And then when I wake up, I'll look at the affirmations really quickly, right? And I think those are that process has been probably the most healing of all of them, because I'm taking that time to write down those affirmations. And quite often I'm a night owl, so I'm awake probably much longer than other people, and then so in the early morning I'm writing all of these affirmations down, putting them under my pillow, and I'm sleeping on it, and then I wake up and then I look at them again, as I said, and I don't necessarily say them out loud, but I will, kind of hear them going through my brain so that I can process that and get that going on in my mind a little bit better. I've actually also studied to be a core conditioning specialist because I've been in and out of physical therapy my whole life because I have some spine issues, disc issues. They're the worst. Oh my gosh. So I actually took the time to actually get certified as a core conditioning specialist. And so I'm in the process of actually coming up with a whole thing that I'm going to end up putting up online that actually helps to deal with different disc issues, because I have one that's herniated, I have one that's bulging, I have one that's like pressing out and doing weird things, right? And I have slight curvatures and scoliosis in the top of my spine and some weird funky things going on in the base of my spine. Some are just medical anomalies, and some are actually have been caused by whether it's been getting thrown off a horse or different traumas that have happened that have been induced by maybe a person. So with myself, I have damaged nerves, and so I do have a bit of a central nervous system disorder. So what's been affected the most has been my vagus nerve. So for myself, when I have a seizure, it's induced by something that's triggering me. So the therapist that I've been talking with most recently has diagnosed me with being an HSP, which means a highly sensitive person. So when someone is telling me their story, I'm essentially reliving it. I am feeling it into my core. And this has happened actually in public, where I have passed out once, twice, maybe 3 times, because I can't handle, what's actually happened to them, and I'm internalizing it. All of a sudden, boom, I'm out, and I can't, I just I'm over empathizing is what I tend to do. But it's important for anyone, before you start embarking a lot on working with subliminals, is to get go in for a physical, get your health checked up, make sure that you're healthy, get your thyroid levels checked, get all of these different things checked before you start embarking on all of these different ideas that you want to implant into your brain, so you know that you're doing something healthy for yourself. That's super, super important, because what I want, of course, is to help people. I want people to be the healthiest versions of themselves, the best versions of themselves that they can be, and the best way to do that is to do these subliminals in a healthy way. I've seen online on YouTube that they do have some subliminals that are for weight loss that are extreme, absolutely extreme, not necessarily the healthiest thing in the world, because that can actually program into the brain some pretty unhealthy patterns. So they can actually cause someone to have an extreme case of BDD, body dysmorphic disorder, where they think that they're, you know, they may be as skinny as my finger, but they think that they're huge or they're fat. And the subliminal that they've been listening to, maybe the person didn't mean to do anything hurtful, but the way that they were actually spoken maybe got into their brain waves and thinking, oh, I'm fat, because they're talking about the word fat. Just something to think about. The word fat connotates with a negative word. The word debt connotates with a negative word. So it's important that when you're working with different affirmations and subliminals, is to ensure that you're working with something that is more positive in general. So instead of listening to someone say debt free, sometimes the brain will just hold on to that word debt, and that is such a negative word. I mean, if you start thinking about debt more, what happens? You're going to bring more of that into your life. And you don't want more debt in your life. You want to have financial abundance. You want to have an abundance of money in your life. You want large sums of money in your life. I know Jake Ducey in his hypnosis, which you should go listen to because it really is amazing. You know, he's talking about avalanches of money coming into your life, abundance of money coming into your life. And it happened. It really did. I didn't, and it was totally and completely unexpected. So beautiful thoughts are sort of, they grow. They're like the seeds that have been planted, and they just grow even more and more. So it's that idea of what you focus on starts growing more in your life. So if you want to focus on bringing more money into your life, use affirmations that are positive and bringing in healthy ways what you need or want into your life. But remember, if you're focusing on need and want, you're just going to need it and you're just going to want it more. I found that for myself. So the important thing is to focus on what you want the most, and not in the idea of want. So for example, right now I am pet sitting for these two adorable little pomskis right now. And the funny thing is, they look like little husky puppies. Of course, you know, I have a husky. And I before they even started coming to the park, I kept thinking, oh, pomskis are so cute. I wish I could see some pomskis. Maybe I'll rescue some pomskis. And then they started coming to the park, and I was like, this is working. And then now I'm pet sitting them. Right? Beautiful energy. They're so vibrant, and they are finally napping. We got up early. We went out for a walk. They've been running around like crazy in the backyard, and now they're passed out. So did something right here. So they're tired. But what's important when you're also focusing on these things is focusing on these things in a healthy way. So it's not like it's an obsession of a sort. It's a healthy reprogramming. So for example, some of the subliminals that I've listened to in the past had a lot to do with reestablishing healthy boundaries, because I had a lot of boundaries that were crossed when I was a child in very unhealthy ways, very traumatic ways. I had to learn how to kind of access my inner strength to be able to say, okay, no, this is inappropriate. No, I'm not going to do this. No, you can't do that. No, I don't want that in my life. It's accessing that ability to be able to say, no, that's not right for me. That's not healthy. And it's important to be able to establish that for yourself, especially for someone that's gone through any kind of sexual abuse, molestation, rape. I can't say that word. But you know what I mean. it's that idea of learning how to change your thought patterns and to learn how to establish something that's healthy that's going on in your brainwaves. So you're not thinking over and over again that I'm a victim. Victim equals a negative word. So we don't want to think about being a victim. We want to think about being a survivor. So my mantra throughout my life has been, I'm a driver, I'm a survivor. Survivor rhymes with driver. Yeah. All right. So it may seem kind of like a silly affirmation, but it's something that has worked for me. So I find that I survive some things that maybe a lot of other people wouldn't necessarily survive. And some of those subjects are completely different YouTube videos that I can make on another day. And again, I want to talk about these subliminals that do work with frequencies, with solfeggios. If you are okay in listening to frequencies, if you are free from having a seizure disorder, they can be beautiful, beautiful healing modalities. 528 is very healing for your heart chakra. 369 is actually really good for your root chakra. There are several, there's so many different solfeggio frequencies. So it's important to kind of do your own research a little bit. I know what I know only because I've studied music and I've studied frequencies and solfeggios. That can be a completely different video for another day. But it is important to note that if you do have any kind of seizure disorder, especially if it's induced by epilepsy, is to stay away from those frequencies and learn how to establish those waves of frequencies within yourself. So some different ways that you can do that within yourself. Of course, if you have dogs in your house, that's going to change the whole vibe of the house, the whole frequency of the house. If you music that you're listening to doesn't necessarily have subliminals in it per se, but pay attention to the words that you're listening to over and over again. Is it something that you really want to hear over and over again? Because I know for myself, I love metal music, but I found that the more that I listened to metal music, the angrier I got. And I started having to deal with more anger issues. I had to go into therapy for anger management, right? I had to go through cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. So it's important to really pay attention to the words that you're listening to and just think about it. Do you really want to hear that over and over again? Is that the kind of person that you really want to be? I love listening to Ozzy Osbourne, and I will do that, but I'm not going to do it every single day of my life. I change things up a bit. People like to say that I have some kind of personality disorder or something because one day I'll be listening to Metallica and another day I'll be listening to BTS. I mean, it's it's about where I am at a given moment and what I really want to listen to. If I want to listen to some upbeat music that's going to get me to a happier place in my life, yeah, I'm probably going to end up listening to like Andre Day or BTS. It gets me to a happier space in my brain waves. I feel better. I access neural pathways that are learning, to rise up, right? Learning how to think a little bit happier or even be a little bit happier instead of going along on this kind of like plateau of what some people would call melancholy or sadness. And being on that plateau of melancholy or sadness isn't necessarily the healthiest thing in the world. It's important to be able to, yes, express your feelings, express your sadness do it in healthy forms, you know, don't, so you're not totally and completely in it all the time, because it's so hard to be in it all the time. I know, I've been there. I've had some very difficult things happen in my life, and I'm not going to list those right now, but I'm just going to say, for example, grieving. Everyone grieves at, you know, at a different pace, at different levels, in different ways. So what is so important when you're grieving is to be able to allow yourself the process of grieving. So whether you've lost a child or a dog or a parent or a sister or a brother, it doesn't matter. It's a loss, and you feel that so strongly. And cry, let the emotions out, express them to the people that you love. It's important to do that, because if you just keep it bottled up and something shakes you and you take that top off, boom, you know, all of these emotions come out all at once. So what's important is to sort of like, you know, when you're taking that top off, and little by little by little, so it doesn't go exploding all over the place. Or that idea of tapping on top of the cans, like, hey, 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 right? So we're gonna open you now. We're settling the bubbles down so this can open up and not be explosive. What I've learned for myself, because I have had some major anger issues in my life because of a lot of trauma that I've gone through, what I have found is emotional freedom technique and EFT, which I'm actually certified in now, so I can do that a lot more on this channel. I saw that one of the videos that has gotten some of the most views was actually an emotional freedom technique, the tapping, going through all of these points in here, and here, and here. It stirs up all of your neurons, all of those different pathways, and it teaches you to release those negative thoughts and how to program in positive thoughts. It's about changing your way of thinking. It's about realizing where you are in your feelings about something. So for example, if I'm really sad, if I'm really missing one of my friends who's died, I will you know, stop for a minute and I will think kind of on a scale, where am I on this sadness from 1 to 10? If I'm like at 11, I'm like, okay, I really need to deal with this because I'm really sad and I can't stop crying because I really miss her. I might sit down and I'll let myself cry because I miss her. She was one of my dearest friends, right? It's okay. Let those emotions out and cry. And then I will either hug on my dog and he'll give me love, and that starts to raise my vibration up a little bit. And then I will kind of sit and focus, maybe drink some tea or some water or something that's going to help to calm me down a little bit. And then I will go through a round of tapping. And as I do that round of this emotional freedom technique, I realized that that level goes from like that 10 or 11 down to maybe a 5 or a 4 and even a 3. And when I get down to that level of not being so sad, and I'm letting the negative energies out and I'm letting the positive energies in, and what happens is I'm doing that, I'm accessing memories that come back to me that I remember of her laughing and singing and playing the guitar, or watching her in a play, or watching her rock out on stage and just this, you know, standing there and dancing around and just being totally and completely in awe of her, and just remembering that loving, beautiful friendship that I had with her. And it's accessing those beautiful, beautiful memories, accessing those beautiful ideas with beautiful frequencies. And to me, she's one of my angels. Not necessarily an angel. I don't think she would consider herself an angel to any degree, but she's definitely there for me behind the scenes, and she's laughing and she's giggling, and I can hear the giggle if I'm, you know, playing around doing different voices and things. It's the same idea if I start getting angry or upset. I had a cousin of mine that had an awful thing happen to her, and I get really angry. I've had a lot of anger issues over this, and I just have learned how to kind of access an area in my brain of understanding what happened, understanding the whole, what happened was just so awful, you know, and I miss her. She died in, what, 1992, I think, 93. And that would be a whole different YouTube video. And I know some people really, really loved for me to talk about this, simply because when I was in my 20s, I looked so much like her, and I really freaked out some of her friends, and I really freaked out her bandmates because they thought they were seeing a ghost, but they were seeing me. I know when I was doing some PR in Philadelphia for different groups, and I was doing a little PR for Mudhoney, and I went backstage and I was talking to Mark Arm, and he's looking at me and he's like, oh. You know, the whole band is standing there looking at me like, because I'm not prepared right now to actually talk about the whole thing, but in the process of healing and going through all of this and actually listening to her music and listening to all sorts of other different music that she loved listening to and what she taught me, you know, the idea of tapping into blues music, tapping into those areas of your life that you love so much, that you're so passionate about. And this was something that Mia talked about a lot, passion. Finding those passions in your life. And really, because I was going through a very difficult relationship, she would just say, you know, she had a very passionate way of talking about things, a very, you know, kind of punk attitude, fun attitude, you know, get those things out of you. You know, she's like threatening to come over and rip up my pink t-shirts and my pink shorts and turn me into the punk that wears pink. That's what she was. She's like, she would sing pretty punk and pink to me, you know, changing up the tune a bit. That was her way of getting me to change my thought patterns in my own brain, because at that point in my life, I was very much in victim mode, and I didn't know any better because of things that happened in my life, and that's, you know, just where I was. And then she had to say to me, okay, so I'm related to you on your mother's side of the family, but your father's side of the family, Driver, rhymes with survivor. She's the one that actually got me started on that. So yeah. So find those different mantras within your life, accessing those theta waves before you fall asleep and as you wake up, and it's saying those mantras to yourself has made such a difference in my life. I survived so much. It's absolutely amazing. Again, whole different YouTube video for another day probably, because this is already getting long. But access those theta brainwaves before you fall asleep, as you wake up, meditate first thing in the morning. Think about all the beautiful things that you want in your life. They'll come into your life, trust me. If you're thinking about fluffy, adorable huskies, you'll end up attracting into your life somewhere you're going to see those fluffy, adorable huskies, and maybe you'll go and you'll be in the ASPCA, and there'll be a bunch of, or maybe the perfect fluffy, adorable husky, and you'll say, oh, I'm taking you home, right? So accessing those different spots in your own self instead of having to rely on the external can be even more powerful and an even more powerful healing modality for yourself. And if you need any help and accessing any of those different brain waves within yourself, if you need some help with your meditation techniques and you don't want an external one from someone that is on YouTube, if you are distrusting like a lot of people are, I know for myself, because of things that have happened in my life, I'm not the most trusting individual, so I tend to rely on myself for a lot more. So it's important to be able to learn how to trust though. So maybe that could actually be one of your mantras, is learning that trust. And I'm just, remember I had written this song years ago called Trust. It is all about learning that trust comes from within yourself, and not necessarily from someone external, because you can't learn how to trust unless you access that within yourself, and learning how to trust yourself. So important. And another thing that I did want to touch on really quickly with some of the subliminals that use hypnosis, they do access different areas in your brain, and because they are working with the frequencies and maybe a little bit of spirituality at the same time, and tapping into something that is talked about a lot online is the supernatural. So the idea of tapping into the supernatural and bringing that into your own ethereal way of being, really important to be careful with, because when you're accessing those energies, you never know what you're going to get. And it's really important to make that intention of what you want. So if you want, maybe you want to access some kind of really cool supernatural ability of some sort. I'm not saying you're going to turn into like Batman or Superman or Poison Ivy or, Catwoman or something like that, but it's the idea of tapping into different energies. Maybe you like the idea of Catwoman because she is cool and she wears leather, and she's got all these cats around her and she has a cat-like quality. Maybe you love that quality about it, and you just, very feline and ethereal. It's tapping into positive energies and bringing that out through yourself, instead of tapping into something that maybe might have some darker energies or maybe some darker intentions that you're not aware of. So it's important, really, really important for you to do your research on those subliminals before you're listening to them. Better yet, work with the ones that you know are going to be healthy and help you establish whether it's healthy boundaries or manifesting more money in your life or more love in your life. There's so many different ways of doing it. You don't necessarily have to listen to someone on YouTube to tell you how to do it. You can access that within your inner being, and accessing those theta waves within yourself in order to bring those beautiful manifestations into your life. So here I will leave it at that. I wish you a beautiful day, beautiful evening, wherever you are, beautiful energies. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Bye.